Hi, welcome to my channel guys. This is the second part of Psionic Marvel. If you like this video, please like and subscribe and comment down below. The author's website will be in the description. Chapter 02, The New Mutants. Andrew walked through the long hallway as he practiced his ability by sensing the interior of the rooms that he passed by. He then slowly came to a stop in front of a door as he can hear voices inside. He then tried to sense what's happening inside by spreading his telekinetic sense in the room. Meeting room. Dr. Reyes and 3 young women and 2 young males sat in front of her, all of them gathering in a circle shape. Does anyone else like to share their first time? Dr. Reyes spoke as she looks at them. New girl, said the woman with long golden hair and a dragon puppet in her hand as she turned her head to look at the teenage girl who just came inside the room a moment ago and continued with, "How fucked up are you, Ileana?" Dr. Reyes said, but then got cut off. "Drugs, I bet, or a nympho maybe." Hopefully, the man who cut her off said as he smiled at the teenage girl, "Ileana. Roberto. Keep behaving exactly like what you are doing right now and maybe we can just spend the rest of the day in solitary," Dr. Reyes said calmly as she looked at the 2 who was trying to cause trouble. The 2 fell in silence at that sentence. Clearly not fond of being in solitary, Andrew listened for a bit and then decided to make his entrance. Andrew opened the door and came in as he looks at the people inside. The main characters looks exactly as their movie counterparts. Ileana having her signature annoyed look and long golden hair with her dragon toy locked on her hand. Ileana acting magic is a relatively strong mutant with the ability to teleport to limbo. Invoke her soul sword and enhanced physical capabilities. Sam looking like he was beaten with his eyes blackened and having a cast on his right arm. Sam a cannonball possesses the ability to generate thermochemical energy from his body. This energy is used as thrust to cause his body to be propelled through the air, like his namesake, at great heights and speeds. Roberto having the usual smirk on his face and the narcissistic aura that surrounds him as he cockily sat on his chair. Roberto Aku Sunspot is a mutant with the ability to absorb and manipulate solar energy. Using solar energy he can augment his physical abilities to great heights. Rain with her ever-innocent look as she looks at him with her big bright eyes with her short hair. Rain Aka Wolfsbane is a mutant with the ability to transform into a werewolf. This gives her an enhanced physical capabilities and heightened senses. However, she is not a real werewolf, and, therefore, is not restricted to the limitations of a creature of the night like the full moon and silver-based items. And we got the protagonist. Danny sat on her chair with a downcast look after the 2 made fun of her. Danny has the mutant ability to generate and even manipulate powerfully realistic psychic illusions in the form of an individual's greatest fear or desire. By using her power, she is able to manifest the greatest fear of others in the form of near-reality shattering illusions, capable of inflicting both physical and mental damage on her targets. Ileana and Roberto looks at him and immediately lost their interest after seeing nothing out of ordinary from him. Rain just slightly smiled at him. Danny looks at him curiously. Sam nodded at him with a slight smile, clearly happy at having another guy in the group. Dr. Reyes sighed and then said, "Okay guys, heads up. This is Andrew. Andrew, this is Ileana, Rain, Danny, Roberto and Sam." She then introduced them respectively. "Ileana, since you seem to be itching to get out of this room, why don't you give this to a tour yourself?" Dr. Reyes said as she turns Ileana. "Why do I have to?" Ileana said as she stands up and looked down at Dr. Reyes with annoyance. "Because I am asking you," Dr. Reyes said with calmness as she tries to assert dominance. Ileana rolled her eyes with a groan and immediately got out of the door as Danny and Andrew, who just chuckled, followed her. Andrew followed Ileana quietly while Danny kept asking questions. They got out of the building as Ileana introduced the establishments to them with visible annoyance. Andrew looked at this wide and vast place filled with dilapidated structures. He then looked as the 2 talked with Ileana spraying paint on a fountain. The 2 talked as Danny suddenly ran while Ileana sarcastically motivated her. Andrew looked at the running Danny and Ileana, who followed her while walking. Andrew shook his head as he slowly floated in the air and began to rise in altitude. He took a look at the place, which consists of some small buildings and with trees surrounding the whole place. He then continued to rise slowly and came to a stop at around 50 meters in the air as he raised his hands above his head as his hands came to a stop because of a barrier. The barrier revealed itself from being invisible and shone in orange color as Andrew touched it, disappearing and returning to its invisible state after he removes his hands. He then flew down after that. Andrew made his way inside the cafeteria and approached Roberto, who was the one serving their lunch. He took his lunch as he said, "Thanks." He took a sit in the table where Sam was also eating. He sat as Sam looks at him silently and got back to eating. Andrew broke the silence as he said, "What's up, I know you already know me from earlier, but just want to introduce myself personally. I'm Andrew Detmer." He then raised his hands asking Sam for a handshake. Sam looks at him and then shook his hands. "I'm Sam Guthrie." The two quickly hit it off as they finished their foods and then gave their plates to Roberto, who was the one washing the dishes. They made their way outside while Sam gave Andrew some information regarding where they from or what were their powers, etc. They came to the damaged basketball court while Sam saying that he was gonna practice his ability. Rain and Danny also arrived at the place as they talked while looking at Sam. Sam's body began to glow with red veins began to get visible on his body as he, wish blast off and began to flying at high speeds while slamming at the ground a few times. After a few minutes of him miserably attempting to land smoothly, he stops after slamming into some wood boxes and groans. "That was smooth," Andrew said after walking near him with his face twitching as he tried to hold himself from laughing. "Fuck you, man," Sam groaned as he shakily stand from the ground as glares at Andrew. "Haha." Andrew laughed as he helped him stand. The day quickly passed as another day came. The sun shone brightly as it illuminated the family. Andrew, who had just taken shower, sat in a meditative position in the vast green field away from the facility as his telekinetic sense spread throughout his surroundings. He tried to sense everything in his range of 50 meters. His face contorted as huge information came crashing through his head all at once. How the trees around him danced, how the grasses waves at every whip of the air. The headache continued for an hour before it slowly subsided as he opened his with a smile. He looked down at his hands and slowly spread his palm. He then controlled his telekinetic energy to form a blade construct. After 2 seconds, his telekinetic energy formed an invisible blade. He then pointed his palm forward as the blade moved in high speeds, cutting blades of grass in its path as he willed it to slowly dissipate after reaching far away from him. He then stands up and stretched his body as he made his way in the facility while still practicing his ability by passively coating his skin with a thin film like telekinetic energy. This is one of the way he thought of that would increase his control over his ability even when he's not focusing on practicing. Night came quickly without anything happening out of ordinary except for Ileana and Danny, whose heated argument turned into a fight with Ileana attacking Danny with her soul sword, who was saved by Dr. Reyes, who arrived on time to stop the fight. The two ended up in isolation to reflect on their actions. Chapter 03, Upgrades. In a room filled with tables, chairs and bookshelves that are filled with numerous books, we can see 6 people sitting in a meditative position on the ground with closed eyes as they inhaled and exhaled in rhythm. With the exception of Ileana, who was just casually sitting while looking at Dr. Reyes lazily. "Control," Dr. Reyes said repeatedly with her eyes closed, and with the final control, she opened her eyes as she looked at the man just side after seeing Ileana. After the session finished, I said goodbye to the young mutants and then immediately made my way back to my room after an epiphany struck me after meditating. I sat at my bed with my legs crossed and cleared my head of anything that will distract me in the middle of my little project. After clearing my head, I then tried to look inside me. Instead of bringing the telekinetic energy inside of outside, I tried to sense inside the energy itself. It did not take long for me to find what I was looking for. After looking carefully through the realm of the energy itself, I found the source of my ability. I saw a bundle of energy that glows in mystical red and blue as it pulsated like it's alive. I then slowly made my consciousness move towards it to try and probe it. Seconds after doing that, I immediately believed in the phrase "curiosity kills the cat," as headache that feels nothing like I experienced before assaulted my head. It felt like thousands upon thousands of needles are poking my brain slowly but continuously. I gritted my teeth in pain and tried to not make a sound. The mystical energy that gave me my ability screeched like a fucking banshee even without a visible mouth, adding more pain to what I am currently feeling. Some things kept flashing through my mind as I could not think of anything anymore and immediately lost consciousness after enduring that for 5 minutes. I slowly opened my eyes and shifted in the bed uncomfortably as I felt cold sweat soaking my clothes. I then helped myself to sit as I held my head, feeling the leftover pain pulsing in my head. Before I could make any more move, the door to my room opened and with it, Dr. Reyes revealed herself as she approached me. "What happened, Andrew? I saw you holding your head in the camera earlier. You look like you were in so much pain," she said with worry visible in her voice and her eyes revealing such a deep concern that it almost made me shed a tear. If didn't know shit, I would have thought this woman is really genuine, Andrew thought. He looked at Dr. Reyes and just smiled wryly. He then said, I was actually just playing with my power and thought that it would be good to probe my mind with it, but then, you know what happened next," Andrew said while scratching his head, which he lowered because of embarrassment. Dr. Reyes sighed as he neared him and sat on the side of the bed. "Andrew, you shouldn't mess with your power like that, especially with your brain. You should know that brain isn't to be casually meddled with, right? She then sighed as she patted Andrew's left shoulder and then continued with, Andrew, I can see that you've definitely adapted and become more close with the other patients. That's a good thing, Andrew. I can see that. You're really on your way to great improvement. Continue like this and sooner than later you'll definitely be free from here. Okay, she gently smiled and then stood up. Okay, Andrew said with his head still lowered. Dr. Reyes nodded as she made her way to the door, but then, Dr. Reyes, I just want to say, thank you for accepting me and not giving up on me despite of what I have done before. Thank you, Andrew said as he raised his head to look at Dr. Reyes with his eyes glistening with tear and overflowing with gratitude and appreciation. No problem. You're always welcome, Dr. Reyes said and got out of the door with a smile. Clearly satisfied with the future killer, if there's a rank for acting somewhere, I'd definitely be on the S rank already. Heh, I thought as I laughed in my mind, but my external appearance still retaining its smile. Now, let's talk about the changes that happened after I lost consciousness. I looked at the clock and saw that just an hour has passed since. The bundle of energy before have now completely disappeared. I found out that when it dissipated, its very essence merged with me, my mind specifically. It gave me an enhanced and more precise control over my TK and more clear view of what I can now do and what I will be able to do. I also found out that that bundle of mystical energy that pulsated like it was alive was actually a remnant parasite attached to the very power that I got from the crystal in structure. Furthermore, that crystal was actually a product of something otherworldly after I saw some memories from that parasite. I don't really know the details, but from what I saw, that crystal was actually something that the alien race uses as an invader. The crystal will be sent by them to planets, and then the crystal would do its work by slowly corrupting the life forms inhabiting the world, and then finally after the whole world was under the crystal's control, the aliens will do the rest, reaping the benefits without doing much effort. Fortunately, from the flashes of memories, the alien race was actually already extinct after trying to infiltrate some world that they can't take on. That crystal was actually the last of its kind, and the reason why Matt and Steve wasn't corrupted and controlled was because the crystal was actually approaching the end of its life and was suffering to some unknown illness. So instead of controlling us, it accidentally gave us our abilities while using all of its remaining energy and leaving only its last security, the parasite. This parasite was the last line of its security, added by the alien race in case something happened to their crystals. It will feed on me as I grow strong, and when I am strong enough, this parasite will take over my body without me even having the slightest capability to resist it, and will begin the job of the crystal, corruption and invasion. Now let's end the boring talk and let me tell you about my ability, since that parasite is now in heaven, parasite heaven, or hell, never mind. First, I then crossed my legs again and took a peek inside my body using my telekinetic sense, and surprisingly, I was not blocked by just muscles and blood. I could now see my insides in much more detail, but still not to the point of seeing cells. But I can feel and I instinctively know that I can somehow control some part of my very being, like my muscles, bones, tissues, organs, and my very own blood, which equates to me now having a limited form of hemokinesis. Since I can feel that the possibility of me doing blood bending on others is still low. After all that, I removed my senses from my inside and then focused as I tried to manifest the force field around. It formed much quicker than before, and it is also more tough since I could see that it is more thick due of the increase to my control. After that, I instantaneously spread my TK sense, which now has expanded its range to about 150 meters, 200 if I really push. It also seems able to bypass restrictions, as I can clearly sense the ground outside the force field that Dr. Reyes passively puts on. I could now see things much more clearly inside it. As I recall my telekinetic domain, I felt something. As I focused, I found out that this was signals that comes from a group of people. It was the mutants. I then focused my telekinesis while using my telekinetic domain simultaneously on them. I then focused on Berto, who was sitting in a chair with wire clips attached on his fingers, and as I focused on him, I suddenly felt a feeling of nervousness, and it came from him. Oh, I'm also now an empath, huh? I should work on this for it to become telepathy, he thought as he discovered this. I then tried gathering a small amount of telekinetic energy in my palm, which I carefully hid from the camera that was on the corner of the ceiling. I slowly compressed it, slowly but surely, to make sure no incident happens. A small ember of fire suddenly manifested above my palm, and just as it came I immediately extinguished it. Pyrokinesis? Check. After that I tried gathering the water vapor in the air, which I wasn't successful. It felt like I would be able to do it if I train a bit more. I then tried other basic forms of kinesis that I can think of, which was of course not successful again. After the unsuccessful experiments, I then thought of something brilliant, and then I tried to think of different things all at once and was surprisingly able to do it. Parallel thinking. Check. I began to feel a little headache after I tried to think above a dozen different things at once, so I turned it off. After all that, I activated my telekinetic domain and controlled it to only be about 10 meters around me, and using parallel thinking, I then made it passive. The increase to my precision also obviously comes with the increase of things that I can lift with my telekinesis. If in the past I can blast away multiple cars and lift bus, then now I roughly estimates that increased by about twofold, after reviewing all the upgrades that is power gained. Andrew smiled with satisfaction as he stretched his body in the bed and stood up. He frowns a bit as he smells his clothes that stuck to his body and began making his way quickly to the shower. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please like and subscribe and comment down below if you would like the next part.